Welcome to the third episode of Dear Michelle Obama, the podcast, aka Dear Michelle. I am your host, Anonymous. In the last episode titled Normal, I defined what normal looked like in my life. In this episode, I discuss, among other things, 6 types of daddies. There were 4. I added 2. I need to warn you, however, that this episode discusses child abuse. This episode is titled Cat Milk. But here, take a listen. You can tell by the way that Michelle Obama loves her husband that she was loved by her father. There is a steadiness, a certainty with which women move in and through the world when they are covered by their father's love. Daughters loved by their fathers wear that love as well as they do their favorite pair of red bottoms or their favorite perfume. They are comfortable with themselves and with the people, in particular men, around them. There are 5 distinct types of fathers. There are daddies who go to work and come home, kick off their shoes, and get on the floor to play with their kids. You see them at the park or the gym or the bowling alley. They take their kids fishing and they appear to be genuinely happy to have been gifted a child. Then there are daddies who work until either their hands or their minds bleed. They're too tired to do much else. And I don't mean tired as in they come home, take a nap. I mean tired. There's a difference. Tired is, I just came home from work. I'm about to kick off these shoes and take off my over-the-shoulder boulder holder, grab myself a beer, and fall asleep someplace uncomfortable. And I know, you're thinking, daddies don't wear bras. Well, first of all, some daddies do, and I'm not here to judge. Second, I meant that as a metaphor, because nobody, and I mean nobody, does tired quite like black women. If Tide had a face, she would look like a black woman. But I digress. My point is that some daddies pay bills, but not much attention. Then there are absentee daddies. I would bet my right pinky toe you think that because he's absent, he has forgotten all about you. Not true. He thinks about you every single day. He simply makes the decision every single day not to do a damn thing about it. Stop blaming yourself because you didn't get a chance to Luther Vandross dance with my father again or ever. Not everyone who comes into your life is meant to stay. Besides, it isn't up to you to take on his Mama Jesus issues. In case you're wondering, Mama Jesus issues are those issues that you need to address with your mama, Jesus, or both. The 4th category are the daddies who teach. The wise, sage, dispensing knowledge and lessons. Pull up your pants. Hold your head up when you walk. Look people in the eye when you speak to them. Speak to adults with dignity and respect. Make sure you perform well in school. Be gentle when you step on the brakes. And then there are daddies who are like cats. You can feed them and give them a good home, but it won't matter. Because as soon as you leave your front door open too long, that cat is going to run out of the house, down the street, and start eating another family's food and scratching on that family's bedpost. Don't worry, his ass will wander back home one day. My daddy was at some point all 5 of them. I didn't know from one day to the next which version of him we were going to get. When he was roll on the floor, play with the kids, daddy, I would squeal with delight. When he was bleeding hands, daddy, I understood. When he was absentee, daddy, I knew he loved me, even when the days between milk runs drug on for weeks or even years. He rarely dispensed advice, but when he did, I listened. But unlike other fathers, my father didn't just have Mama Jesus issues. No, he had Mama Demon issues. He wrestled with things I was too young to understand. Things that made him do and say things you wouldn't think men who really love their families would ever do and say. Like the time my father decided to cheat on my mother and take me along for the ride. The woman he cheats on my mother with, a woman I nicknamed Bad Choices, is nothing like my mother. Bad Choices smells like cigarettes and cheap liquor. She wears a dingy nightgown that barely covers her nakedness. I hear strange sounds emanate from the bedroom after she and my father enter and close the door. No one has to tell me that something is wrong with their interaction. I see gestures and glances I know they're not supposed to exchange. Because these are gestures and glances I've only ever seen him exchange with my mother. Bad Choices has a daughter. Her daughter is born on the same day and in the same hospital as me. In fact, with the exception of a single letter, our government names are virtually identical. We share birth sites, names, and my daddy. And if I'm honest, I hate her for taking what should belong to me. One day, Bad Choices Jr. gives me her favorite Barbie to play with. I rip off the Barbie's head and watch as the head sails across the room and lands in a pot of her mama's nasty ass chili. I grab a chair, fish out the Barbie, and tell Bad Choices Jr. that if she tells anyone what I just did, I will do to her what I did to her Barbie. She cries. I laugh. And for the first time in my life, I am aware that I have the capacity to be cruel, or at a minimum, that I have the capacity to imagine that I can behead somebody and launch them across the room and into a pot of chili. It becomes increasingly difficult for me to keep my father's secrets about where we go, with whom, and how long we stay. It takes me years of therapy to realize that he doesn't really spend time with me. This isn't quality daddy-daughter time. I am his pint-sized wingman, his excuse, the currency he exchanges for the things he wants but has no right to possess. One day, my mother asked me if I had fun with my father that day, and I accidentally let it slip that we weren't with my cousins like my father asked me to lie and say we were. Later that night, my father slips into my room and presses a butter knife to my throat. He warns that if my parents break up, it will be my fault. He removes the knife, kisses me on the forehead, and places crumbled up bills beneath my pillow. I cry myself to sleep. I awake and think I must have dreamed it all, but I reach under my pillow to find crumbled bills, proof that my father is neither the man nor the father I imagined him to be. I am flooded with the strange mix of conflicting emotions. My first thought is that I have to forgive him very quickly. It isn't that I am a child and children tend to be very forgiving. It is that if my mother doesn't like me and my father doesn't love me, then where does that leave me? I can take being unloved by my mother. I'm used to it. Again, this is our normal. But I've never had to live in a world where I have to consider that my father doesn't. Here's the thing. In my small world, my father doesn't just represent himself. He represents all men. This is true as he morphs into all 5 categories of the fathers I previously defined. But it is never truer than when I begin to think that he isn't the knight in shining armor I always believed him to be. Look, I don't know if it's true that only men can teach boys to be men. I'd like to think that the path to human decency doesn't need to be guided by gender. But my argument crumbles the moment I think back upon what my father did to me. Because girls need their fathers to tell them that the world and the people in it are good and kind, and to protect them when that is no longer true. At the very moment my father threatens to kill me, even though it will take me years to unpack, something else happens. Something I will not be able to voice for years to come. For the first time in my life, the love I feel is replaced not by hate, but by something far more sinister. It is replaced by fear. Fear that I'm not good enough, fear that everything is my fault, fear that I am responsible for things that no 6-year-old should ever consider accepting responsibility for. The moment my father presses that knife to my throat, I no longer trust adult men. I now eye them with suspicion, wondering if and when they too will hurt me. And although I cannot name it, I honestly believe that if my parents break up, it will be my fault because I cannot keep a secret. And so I do my best to keep my father's secrets, even if that means I have to lie to do so. And so each time my mother asks if we had fun and where we went, I tell her my father's lies. You see, my lies are the currency I exchange for the things I want and have every right to possess. There's a 6th category of fathers and father-like figures. These are men that inflict, consciously or otherwise, untold damage upon children, upon women, upon their families, their communities, upon the world. Men and leaders of households often make the claim that they want to be respected. But I think that you cannot cause pain to those who are vulnerable and to those who look up to you and expect to be respected. It is the equivalent of gaining the title after losing the fight. The sad thing about my daddy is that he's not yet done. Before it's over, he will metaphorically set fire to everything he once claimed to love. We are but casualties in his ongoing war with his mama demon issues. And so, for the first time in my life, I feel a complex mix of anger, guilt, and shame. I bend and twist beneath the weight of it all, like crumbled bills beneath the pillow of a little girl whose father pressed a knife to her throat. Dear Michelle, I'm grateful to have been able to glimpse the love your husband shows your daughters. They are fortunate to know that they are free to move in and around the world knowing He is there to protect them. And it probably doesn't hurt that they have Secret Service protection. For 8 years, I got to see little girls who look like me be loved, and because they were loved, they are now able to love and be loved in return in the absence of fear. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dear Michelle Obama, the podcast, aka Dear Michelle. If you like what you heard, you can email me at dearmichelle@yahoo.com or tweet me at dearmichelle4. Join me next time where I talk about the clues people leave you in an episode I titled Breadcrumbs. Until next time, bye-bye.